Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PBSC podcast. Steve Moore and Mark Castleman here, coming at you with episode 272. Good topic today. Interesting how this partner termed it. As you can see in the title, my partner, my addict partner, has backed off, quote unquote, from his recovery. Why can't he see it's about more than just being, quote unquote, sober? Real quick, we'll read our submission because there's a lot to cover in this. And again, this comes from a partner of an addict. Hi, first I want to shout you guys out for all the amazing work you do. Truly amazing. Thank you. We really appreciate that. We are coming up to the year anniversary of D-Day, or Disclosure Day, for those who aren't familiar with that term, over here, and with relapses in between that, since that time. I'm not sure why, but these few weeks leading up to D-Day, it's like I have gone backwards. I am struggling so badly. For some reason, it seems like day one all over again. This heaviness and weight and fear and overwhelming sadness. I love my husband more than anything, and I have seen us both grow through this time period individually and together. But I have seen as time passes, him slowly start making as much of an effort in certain areas of recovery. He basically feels, but I have seen as time passes, him slowly start not making as much effort. I apologize, there's a typo there. Not making as much effort in certain areas of recovery. He basically feels the, quote, urge is gone, and he has grown and doesn't need to still be doing the same stuff that he was on day one. While I can agree to an extent lately that I have been feeling a lot more on edge, well, to an extent, I have been feeling a lot more on edge and fearful of late. I continue to take time for myself, working out, reading classes, but he mostly just works. I know you guys don't have all the answers, and I guess I'm not even asking a question. Essentially, I just want to find safety and love in my marriage again and not be so triggered when small things change, or it seems to be me, quote unquote, seems to me that, quote unquote, less effort on his part is being made. Can you also mention, she actually asks this, can you also talk about or touch on lying of any form is still lying in addict behavior? So we can definitely talk about that a bit. He will minimize and manipulate a story to leave stuff out that he knows will cause a fight. So he lies because, quote unquote, it's not important, or, quote unquote, small things and not worth the fight. My thing, or what's important to me, is that it's the principle behind being honest and forthcoming and transparent. Being caught in a lie just makes me feel re-betrayed. He feels as though I'm just being dramatic. Honestly, it's devastating. So really appreciate the realness behind the response, and it really touches on a less discussed kind of dynamic, right, within the recovery process. So much of what is focused on, especially on podcasts and things, tends to be on the disclosure and the need for it and what happens, and if things are really, or the other side, right? Things are really bad and it's all just gone to hell, and how do we get back completely on track and whatever else. And here we are working with a couple who they're a year out from D-Day, right? And things have gotten better, but they've kind of been plateauing and in some ways even regressing a bit. And she finds herself in this place of struggling with feeling safe, and it sounds like he is very much becoming more and more comfortable with mediocrity, I guess is probably a good way to put it. Not to say that that's not a slam on what he has done thus far, but it does seem like a lot of the proactivity has diminished. And so here we are.
As you and I talked about this, Steve, it's, we wanted to talk with the partner, and we'll talk with the addict here in a minute. But it's when we talk about trauma, betrayal trauma, you and I often talk about complex trauma, where it's not just one event, it's disclosure comes out over time. Usually that there's more and more that becomes known. As she says here, there have been relapses since Discovery Day. Every one of those events piles on the trauma, right? It's trauma layered on top of trauma on top of trauma. It's complex trauma. And so it's totally understandable, with that being in mind, that when she sees passivity in his recovery, it is very normal that that would be an inducer for anxiety and diminished trust on her side. You can only, I think of, I had a client many years ago who was a veteran. He had been over in the Gulf War and had been through, I think, 2 or 3 tours of duty. And when he came back, he described to me one time, he's walking down the street and a car backfired.
Mm.
And the next thing he knew, he was kind of coming to himself behind a dumpster in the fetal position, shaking, when he finally realized where he was. All the rest was just knee-jerk reactive. Just that sound of the car backfiring. We have so many of these partners in this betrayal trauma that when, quote, they hear the car backfire in their addict partner, right, where he goes passive, he doesn't seem to be taking it as seriously as he used to. He's become comfortable in his sobriety. It's very normal for them to find themselves curled in the fetal position behind the dumpster as a
Mm.
partner, right? Because this complex trauma gets triggered, and rightly so. So we absolutely relate to what she's describing. Yeah,
Yeah,
very legitimate.
yeah, it's a really difficult dynamic because again, it's not a black and white case right now. Typically, they aren't at all, but this is very, very subtle gray, and there's a lot going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the lying by omission, as Mark indicated, obviously is a huge problem. One thing that I think addicts struggle with a lot is this idea of compartmentalization, and we talk about that all the time through the lens of, we oftentimes will compartmentalize different elements or thought patterns or our behaviors from others, right, as a way to mitigate the guilt or the shame that we feel about addiction. But compartmentalization is definitely not strictly just limited to our thinking or mentality around our own behaviors or the secrets that we keep and that kind of thing. We can absolutely fall into that trap in other areas, and such is the case when it comes to safety. Safety and trust in a relationship do not operate in a compartmentalized manner, meaning that there is no such thing as separating and having just crazy high, unquestionable trust in X, Y, and Z areas and have it completely diminished in others. There is always bleed through and overlap. How we engage or don't engage in a relationship, be as an addict or a partner in this process, builds or diminishes trust and safety, not just in the area in which we're currently operating, but impacts and ripples into all the other areas of the process as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
And we don't, obviously there's not a ton of detail with this, but for any addict listening, it's important for you to know because I mean, I look back on my history. I think I bought into this narrative myself for a while, which is maybe why I'm so passionate about it today. Is this idea that, well, I'm sober. So what's your problem?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm sober, damn it. Like I did what you asked. Freaking stopped acting out. I quit doing these. Guys, that's a great start. But think about that for a minute. Think about it. I'm going to put it in political terms because I know a lot of the guys I work with, they like politics. If one country has been beating up another country for forever, and then the truce is called, would it make sense for the one country to look at the other one and just say, "Hey, we quit bombing you after 10 years. What's the problem? Like you're
Yeah.
fine. Like
Yeah,
what's your deal?"
exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's great and all, but we have like 6 cities that you've leveled to nothing. So,
Well, and let's take it a bit further. Let's say that those two countries 30 years ago entered into a very strong contract
like an
of,
alliance,
of
right?
collaboration and an alliance, and to adhere to certain commitments. And the one country broke that contract and started bombing the other country. And then finally got to the place where they stopped bombing and then says to the other country, "Hey, we stopped bombing you. That should be good enough, right?"
Yeah.
And you step back and go, "Whoa, wait a second. All you've done is just gone back to the basic ground zero of the original contract."
Hmm.
And what we don't realize is addicts in recovery is We broke that contract
We did.
and started acting out. Now we're sober. We're back at ground zero. We now get to start building from there. That's not the arrival place. That just means we're starting to do what we said we were going to do 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yes.
Right? It's
It's
like,
it's a great point, and again, we're not saying that sarcastically because we
no.
get it. I mean, it's when you have because the mindsets that we develop over time, they just don't become ingrained for partners; they become ingrained for addicts. When we start to move from a thriving to survival state, it is easy to look at higher levels of survival or an absence of ongoing issues because it's so much more positive than what we were doing. What's it easy to do? Well, geez, we're good,
Yeah, we're good.
right? No, we're not good, right? We're just not actively causing damage anymore. Right now it's time to rebuild and to actually create the relationship like Mark, like you said, that we committed to 10, 20, 30 years ago, right? Whatever it
Exactly.
was.
Exactly.
So,
Well, now
yeah.
one of the other things she brought up, Steve, that really you and I see this in our clinical work all the time. The power of anniversaries to be
Yeah.
exceptionally triggering,
Yes.
especially for betrayed partners, but also for addicts. But the anniversary of Discovery Day. So she's saying our initial Discovery Day was 1 year ago, and on the anniversary, I felt myself being triggered. Right, and again, if we look at all kinds of trauma, right, the anniversary of when somebody was in a battle, if they were deployed, the anniversary of a horrific car accident, the anniversary, right, the anniversary of a death of a loved one. These are all very powerful triggers for trauma in the brain. And so it's completely understandable and legitimate that she would be experiencing this on the anniversary. Right? It could be the weather, the time of the year. If it where we found a lot of partners struggle horribly is when the anniversary of discovery or disclosure matches up to some other anniversary, like a wedding. I've had people's discovery day be close to their wedding anniversary. Other people's have found it close to Christmas time or some other holiday, and now you have a double whammy of all of that hitting you at once on those anniversaries. Right? It's very common to experience this and all of that being very triggering to the brain that says what? A reminder of betrayal, pain, disappointment, being crushed. And now all of this is reminding me of all of that. And I find myself back in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it is important, ladies, or addicts for that matter, right? To be mindful that when it's natural when anniversaries pop up because of the things that happen during those times or during other significant life events, right? We talked about this during the holiday break several months ago. We talk about it a little bit in the podcast every year because we know it's such a significant issue. Traditions, whether they are deliberately set or not, cause us to naturally reflect on what years past,
Mm-hmm.
which automatically just heightens the self assessment factor, right? It's natural to say, "Geez, where was I last Christmas? Geez, where was I last summer? Gee, where were we last Christmas? Where were we last summer?" So not saying that that's to blame at all, but that absolutely it's very normal for that to be magnified, right? Even little things like weather, right?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
the I mean that can be I'll give you many of you are probably familiar with seasonal affective disorder. It's something that my wife has struggled off and on with for years. We on a routine basis try to make something fun happen during the winter months following the holidays at our house because that recurrently has kind of built up over time, sort of a pattern, right? Of this is sort of it's post holidays. It's kind of like holiday withdrawal. There's nothing fun or exciting going on. And, that can have a cumulative effect over time.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
so lots of
And
things to look at
And the
there.
other thing with regard to these, you have this anniversaries or all these different triggers in the environment reminding you of all this past stuff. So you're in that heightened state, that heightened emotional, fight, flight, freeze, survive, be aware, be mindful that she finds herself in. So she's already heightened. And now add to that in that heightened state that she looks at her partner and says, he's backing off his recovery.
Yeah.
He's become passive in that heightened state that's already present. Imagine what that noticing now does to her trauma.
Yeah.
Yep, very much a part of this.
Absolutely. Well, and that kind of is a good shift or a good segue into shifting towards talking to any addicts who may be listening, be it the addict partner of the submitter or otherwise. It's very common for addicts in recovery to feel a lot of different frustrations. And again, we hear you. We get it. We understand that it can be exhausting. And sometimes, again, when you've lived in that survival state for as long as you have, it can be almost mystifying. Why are we asking more? Why are we pushing for more? Why are we? But you have to remember, guys, when you're talking about a relationship, there's just no other way to say it other than bluntly. If you're in a relationship and you're in recovery, something you have to keep in mind is that it's not all about you. It's just not. There are three recoveries in the room operating, and they operate. Two of them operate completely independent of each other. There's yours, there's hers, and then there's a relationship, which is kind of an ongoing morphing of the two and an interaction between the
Yeah.
two. You and it, now, to be fair, based on this wife's account, again, we just have her account. It sounds like there is some regression on his end, with lack of transparency, passive lying, lying by omission, which, to be clear, is lying. We don't care if there's an omission attached to the end. Lying is lying. But even if that weren't the case, let's just say for sake of argument it wasn't, for all those addicts who are listening where that may not be the case, right? And there is no regression going on. Guys, not pushing forward in the process and relationships and the safety in them are reliant on progress. It's like an economy. It really is. It requires growth in order to survive and to thrive. Relationships are constantly either progressing or regressing. There is no plateau. There
No.
is no such thing as standing still. And
Such,
when you are in a relationship with someone dealing with betrayal trauma, the reality is that they're oftentimes their default speed, and understandably so. In the absence of information, what does the traumatized brain assume? The worst.
fills in the blanks. It has to.
And why not? Because that's what happened in the past,
Yeah.
right? That's exactly what the
Yeah.
scenario that we set up in most cases.
Hey, everybody. PBSC podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
I was in this place for quite a long time. My attitude was, how long am I going to have to keep up this recovery stuff? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of focus. It's meetings. It's sponsors. It's all this stuff that's going on. When are we going to get back to quote normal life?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a understandable but big error that we make as addicts in recovery, right? We need to ask ourselves, what is recovery?
Yeah.
Why am I in recovery? Is it to get my wife off my back? Is it to, get a sense of peace so that we quit bringing this stuff up? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And is it about more than just being sober? Am I in real, true recovery if I just stop touching myself and looking at naked people? Not, I mean, to be blunt.
Yeah, it really, guys, it's the bigger piece of being able to, and we again know it's hard to see, but we would lovingly invite every guy to where if you're wherever you're at listening to this, be asking yourself, are you aiming in the right direction?
Mm.
Meaning, have you aimed your sights high enough for where you could go and where this relationship deserves to go? Not just for her, although we could make a case for that, but for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? You deserve more. It's not even just about the relationship, gentlemen. You deserve more than to live a life that is just free from acting out. Is that a win? For sure. It's a huge win.
It is. It
But
is.
it's really just that would be like akin to so we just announced that we're doing a create for D2C subscribers.
A couples retreat. Yes.
Yeah. And you have to be a decent subscriber to be considered for. We're taking applications for it right now. This would be sort of like the equivalent of taking the cruise, right? Getting on the boat and then just spending the whole week at the buffet. Like that is that a win? Well, for sure. But you're missing so much. Right?
Well,
There's so much more out there for you. There's all this. It opens the door, right? Getting into recovery, guys, and the absence of acting out gets you on the boat.
yeah.
But
And
that's what opens the door to all the new amazing
yes.
destinations,
See that,
right?
and I love that you use that analogy, Steve. Opening the door. You and I both know what it was like to bash our heads up against the wall of acting out,
Yes.
right? Trying to overcome it, clenching our fists and gritting our teeth, just giving ourselves over to it and just wallowing in it and just back and forth and not doing what the whole time that we were in a complete desperate fight with addiction, not being our true higher selves, not enjoying all the wonderful panorama of life because we were hunkered down and having all of our energy expended in either acting out or avoiding acting out or the aftermath of acting out or planning to act out. And I talk about the fact that my life was absorbed in my addiction 24/7
Yeah.
for decades. That's not living. And not until you get to do what is required to draw upon all the resources and tools and work to, quote, get sober, do you then walk through the doorway of that wall you smash your head against and walk into a whole new world. You're like, whoa, what is this place?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
for years, what happened? We were being drug around by one of those lifesaver ring thingies in the water in the ocean behind the boat, just
Yeah.
barely trying to stay afloat. And
Yes.
now we find ourselves in the boat. And we say, "Oh, thank God, I'm here.
Yeah.
We're good." Right?
Yeah.
And is
And
it better? It is so much better.
so
But
much
there is
better.
so much more.
But you and I, Steve, we talk about the three most feared words in recovery. Whenever I had a guy say this the other day, he said it a little different than this, but the three most feared words, I got this.
Yeah, I've got it.
The
I'm
way
good
this
to
guy
go.
worded it to me was, I'm rocking recovery. I'm rocking it, man.
Yeah, yeah, it can get a little bit scary. Get a little bit scary for sure. Right, guys, it's you got to remember this is a bigger piece to a progressive journey, right? We are we are all on this growth to recovery. We start recovery to stop acting out. That's true. And I think that's true of
And you
everybody.
have to.
It's true of me.
Yeah.
That's true.
It has to
But
start.
as you grow in recovery, you grow in capacity and in perspective. We as if I was a if PBC was a restaurant, I might say our slogan might be come for the abstinence, stay for the new life or something, you know? It's
Right.
like
You,
it's like come for the fries, stay for the wings, you know, or whatever. I mean,
because we talk about this crazy important shift. I've had it with guys that have worked with me for a while. They'll get just so tired and kind of fatigued by recovery and say, Mark, how long am I going to have to be in this? And there's a big mental shift for them when I say, let's replace the word recovery and just substitute in another phrase: healthy living and relationships. How long do you want to engage in healthy living and relationships? Like, oh, I see, right? And when they finally get it, they realize this is about more than just moving away from something, the old addiction behaviors. It's me moving toward something, my higher self, my ideal life, what I really want, the people I love and want to be with. I'm moving towards that. And
yeah,
it's this upward spiral, right? Not just avoiding or staying away from that old stuff. What am I going toward? And am I doing it first and foremost for myself? And then for those I love, right? So this healthy living in relationships versus just the old, mundane, boring recovery. Very important shift. And there were a couple things she said where I would really invite this guy and everybody listening. Are you really in active, proactive, healthy living in relationships? Um, he basically said to her, I'm sober, so I don't need to be doing the basic recovery stuff anymore. Well, if you understand basic recovery stuff, you realize that there are principles in beginning recovery that apply to life. How many times, Steve, have we've had many say this to us? I wish everybody on planet Earth could go through the 12-step program, not
yeah,
because they have addiction, because it's all about healthy living and healthy relationships. It's all about learning to surrender what I can't control, stepping out of control and moving into this peace and serenity and proactivity. Right? It's everybody needs to do this stuff. So if he sees this as something he can now stop because he's sober, he's missed a lot of the aspects of what recovery is really about.
for sure. Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up, guys, here's the ever-pressing question. So where do we go from here, right?
Mm.
And this partner didn't ask any questions, but hopefully this has been helpful. But we'll wrap with some things to start with. So we've already kind of addressed this with the addict. So as we finish up here, some thoughts for the partner. There does need to be, if it isn't happening already, and perhaps maybe it's not a question of it happening or not, but maybe just a more clear or more direct discussion of there needs to be a clear examining and then expression of needs and boundaries, which we
Mhm.
just happen to be covering in Dare to Connect right now. So not to put a shameless plug in, but what do they say? What's that passive aggressive? Sorry, not sorry. I hate that phrase, but or if there is no better time right now than right now to come and hit up Dare to Connect for the 2-week free trial at daretoconnectnow.com. We'd love to have you guys come and look at that. If you're interested in the D2C couples retreat, you need to have been in Dare to Connect for a minimum of 3 months to be able to attend that in February. So we'd love to have you come take a look at Dare to Connect as a part of that. If you'd like to join us, there are only going to be 8 other couples coming with Mark and I and our spouses on that, so it's going to be pretty awesome. Um, but and you can again find that all at daretoconnectnow.com. But when it comes to the needs and boundaries, some of those that we feel strongly this partner is definitely going to need. So, addicts, please listen up here. First is definitely going to be empathy, right? The pain needs to be realized and seen. That's first and foremost here. And it sounds like there's a real disconnect with that. This one again, we just getting a snapshot, right? But this woman, by all standards and measures, seems like she's conveying what she's needing in a very vulnerable, non-reactive way, at least in her submission. I don't we don't pretend to know her terribly well, but nothing that I heard in here, contrary to what this addict apparently responded to her with recently, is dramatic. These are real needs
Yeah, these are real.
and real wants.
Yeah.
And not only that, but there is real justification behind them. Now, even if you can't connect with the justification, and you may not agree, that's the beautiful thing about empathy. Empathy doesn't require your agreement. It requires your vulnerability and your openness to the fact that wherever I may be at, it doesn't matter. This is where my partner is, and I need to understand why.
Yeah, and we as guys in recovery starting to lean, move into the horribly uncomfortable, which is what? Learning how to sit in sit with our partners in their pain. Even though it's pain that we cause, we still have the ability to sit with our partners and to feel with them
Yeah.
and to be vulnerable in that. We opening ourselves to asking what are the things that I need to change? What are the wants and needs that you have of me? And putting us proactively leaning in and leading out with seeing and sitting in our partner's pain and what we can do today to help lessen the burden, to help to make deposits to the trust account, to start to build it back up. And this one's huge, Steve, willing to be account able. My ability as a guy in recovery to account for where I'm at, what I'm doing, what I'm not doing, a willingness to take full ownership of my side of the street and to really lean in and lead out with what my partner is needing from me. It's huge. And you had a bullet here, and being proactive, right? What does it mean to be proactive in the recovery process? As opposed to saying, I'm sober, we're good to go. How do I continue to be proactive?
Guys, you hear us say this a lot. It's kind of become a catchphrase for us, but I like it because it's logical, which think it hits a lot of us of us guys' brains and how they work. We let out in the trauma. Wouldn't
Oh,
logic at least dictate that we lead out in the healing?
yeah. We let out in
Right?
our
I
in our
mean,
addiction. We let out with going and doing all of our acting out. We were very proactive in all the aspects of our addiction. Can we
it
not
just
now
makes
bring
sense,
that?
guys. And we don't make moral claims here often, but logic slash just decency would that not dictate, right? That we be leading the charge and saying, I can't heal this for you, but I absolutely can set the stage for it. What can I be doing?
How many times, Steve, we had betrayed partners say, I saw all the effort and time and focus and attention he put into his addiction. Why can't he bring that to this now?
Yes.
And
I
they're
actually had
very
a guy in D2C
confused.
say that very thing, but on his side in an accountable way. We were talking about this very concept, and he actually wrote in the chat, he's like, this used to be a part-time job for me. Why can't recovery be? It
Right?
was a great
I
way
know
of
it's
putting it,
right.
right?
True.
It used to be because we know it was for us as well. Guys, if you're needing help with this, because we understand that the dynamics between a coupleship can be complex. Again, Dare to Connect is a great starting point, especially for bang for your buck in terms of getting outside input and support on these issues from a third party perspective. So we would invite you to definitely take a look at that trial at daretoconnectnow.com, as we said. But also, a third party, right? Like a therapist might be needed to help step in and maybe clarify what each of you is trying to say, trying to need. We know that it's common for partners on both sides of the coin in a relationship dynamic like this on tough issues. You can become very entrenched. And
Yeah.
sometimes having just a third party to be able to kind of weigh in and say, I can't determine your needs, but this does sound reasonable, or this maybe not so much. And let's talk about why can be helpful.
Yeah. Totally agree. All right. Well, hey, thanks for being with us again in this episode. We appreciate and love all of you. You're why we do this work. And we will look forward to picking things up in our next episode or seeing some of you come on over to D2C. That'd be awesome as well.
Absolutely. Be safe, be well, guys, and we will catch you next week.
See
Bye
you.
bye.
Everything expressed on the PBSC podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.